Thompson comes to us from the West Coast. Dave is an economist. He has got a background in environmental kind of law and economies, and he's done a lot of work here in the north, and he's pretty aware of the realities that we face here. And he's the perfect guy to be setting up the context for the next two panels here on renewable energy. So I'm just going to turn it over to Dave, and he's going to talk to us, and then we'll hear from 3 or 4 other panelists. Take it away, Dave.
Thank you very much. Not quite sure about the perfect guy. I'm the guy who's right here right now, so maybe that is the perfect guy, I don't know. Yeah, thanks very much for that. So my task was basically to get us thinking about local generation of energy and how that can be used to build local economies and maybe reduce some of the environmental and social costs of energy generation. And I'm going to keep it very brief because I think it's more important to talk about what's actually going on here. I'm supposed to be looking at trends elsewhere and giving you an idea of what's going on in other parts of the world. So, before I do though, I just want to acknowledge that there is, of course, a lot going on here. This, Lois mentioned my previous work in this jurisdiction, and even though I don't live here, I've had family here and had a lot of chance to come up and visit and work here. And there's an enormous amount going on here, especially in comparison to places like Alberta, where I used to live, and indeed in comparison to BC, where I live now. So all of those images are from up here, looking at all sorts of solar and biomass energy generation. And then here we go to some other places. You can see renewable energy is sort of picking up very quickly all around the world. Especially important is the localized generation. You have an audio problem?
To the mic.
Oh, I'll sit up. I'll just sit. I just didn't want to get that nasty feedback going.
Maybe just take it right off. Did that work?
Well, let's see if that goes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it is happening around the world, and particularly in developing countries. It's important to realize places where they don't necessarily have the investment in energy infrastructure already on the ground, and it becomes a lot more cost competitive in situations like that, and very similar to situations you get in some parts of the Northwest Territories. So here is what's happening in solar PV, photovoltaic electrical generating capacity worldwide. You can see a big takeoff around 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010 when we had the recession and there was a lot of stimulus spending going on. Some countries invested an awful lot at that time, and but the trend has actually still continued after that. So you can also see from this chart some of the changing distribution in where solar power is taking off. So we've got China being a big player. The rest of the world, most of that category is actually in Asia as well, but distributed across a lot of different countries. And what's driving this, and what's being driven by the investment right now, both, is the trends in price. So you can find all sorts of graphs like this, and the last one, basically showing that renewable energy, not just solar, but also wind power and biomass are taking off, and the prices are coming down, partly because of economies of scale in manufacturing, and as well in installation. As more of the stuff gets built, it gets cheaper to build it, and cheaper to install it, and cheaper to run it. So this price trend here is the price per watt of solar modules just to purchase them. But you can also find similar trends in overall production cost per kilowatt hour. So you can see now that, just looking at the scale there, we're between $2 and $4 per watt. Now, the interesting thing is when you get to the point where it becomes cheaper than your next best option, or the option you're looking to replace. So for instance, in the Northwest Territories, I think we're probably going to have more specific data coming up, and more interesting data coming up on where diesel is compared to, or at least I hope we'll have that data, on diesel is compared to these types of costs. When you have the renewable cost coming down and crossing the line where you've got diesel, and getting below that, it becomes cheaper to have your electricity coming from renewables, and that'll drive a big, rapid change. And so, to take an example from elsewhere, in the US, in the Southwest, solar PV is already down below the cost of conventional energy from the grid. And so they've hit that threshold, and they expect that by next year they'll have hit that threshold in a lot of states, in every state except 3. So this is just a function of technological development and the investment in production and installation, driving costs down through economies of scale. So it's not just happening in the US, but we can also look at India, and here's what the World Bank says about the costs in India. They've got a lot of kerosene and diesel generation there as well, and the lack of a grid to make things cheaper, so it's all local. If renewable energy sources replace kerosene and diesel for localized generation and supply, economic gains can be substantial. If you look at the prices of the alternatives in India, I think diesel is now about 10% more expensive than solar PV. So, I meant to include a graph in this presentation, but I can picture it in my mind. I'll have to tell you what it looks like. Basically, a pie chart showing the types of new generation that are being installed. So right now, there's a lot of generation, legacy generation capacity that's in hydro, coal burning, and oil burning, and natural gas burning. That's already on the ground, but what's being built now worldwide, about 90–95% of it is renewables, just because the costs are getting so low. So that's the expansion of generation. And here's some of the reasons. It depends on how your diesel generation is installed, how close it is to the community. I imagine it's well installed here in most situations, probably downwind for the prevailing winds, but there still are some risks. So one of the big drivers worldwide to replace diesel generation for electricity, local diesel generation especially, is the exhaust fumes from diesel. And of course, in addition to the installation being done correctly, there's various pollution control devices that can be used to reduce these byproducts of diesel combustion, but they still exist. So what have we got in there? We've got carcinogens, we've got cancer-causing chemicals, benzene, arsenic, formaldehyde, enough so that the International Agency for Cancer Research has classified diesel exhaust itself as a known human carcinogen. And that was about 3 years ago that they did that, I think. And then you've also got some other sort of environmental pollutants that can also have a health impact. Nitrogen nitrogen dioxide, nitrogen oxides. These are smog-inducing chemicals, and sulfur dioxide as well. And smog, of course, has human health impacts. Acetaldehyde, acrolein, hydrocarbon particles. There's all sorts of stuff in diesel exhaust. And in addition to the cancer-causing properties, there's also risks of cardiovascular, cardiopulmonary, and respiratory disease. So lots of good reasons to replace diesel, in addition to the cost, the sheer cost of paying for the fuel to be imported into the community. Oops, something funny happened to my slide here. Oh, there we go. Interesting. Okay, well, let's look at this graph now. This is just I'm sorry, it's so small, it's probably a little hard to read back there. But this is just a graph showing multipliers. So multipliers were referred to either this morning or last night. It's basically the idea that when you make an investment in anything really, you'll create jobs where you make that investment, and you'll also create jobs indirectly. The firms that supply inputs to the firm where you make your investment, there's going to be employees there's going to be economic growth there. And it'll also induce employment and economic growth in other sectors where those workers spend their money. So this multiplier effect, when you spend money on something, creates jobs throughout the economy. And unfortunately for Canada, the choices we're making with our industrial policy is to go down the road of oil and gas extraction mainly. And if you invest enough, you can get some jobs, but it's actually the worst performing sector in the entire Canadian economy in terms of the multipliers. Out of 61 industries, oil and gas extraction is at the very bottom of the heap in terms of the number of jobs created. So that's the short bar at the bottom there, oil and gas extraction. Right above it is construction, and above that are a few other sectors that are more normal. What this means for the Northwest Territories, of course, is throwing all the eggs in the basket of oil and gas extraction. You need a lot of money to create jobs. And put another way, if you put the same amount of money into other types of development, local economy type developments, including renewable installations, you'll get more bang per buck. So renewable energy, globally, it's a big job creator. That 2.3 million jobs was a figure from a few years ago. It's probably significantly increased since then. And the types of jobs, in the short term, it's mainly installations. There would also be some transportation and procurement jobs. Now, in the Northwest Territories, as with most countries, there's not a lot of jobs in manufacturing the renewable energy equipment. Some of the stuff is going to be imported. Basically, the jurisdictions that invested, as I mentioned earlier, the ones who invested heavily in renewables early on, became the manufacturing centers, as was predicted at the beginning of that investment trend. And in the long term, you've also got operations and maintenance, employment, and replacements. And you've also got a reduction, as I mentioned, of spending on diesel fuel, and the ability to keep some of that money in the community and build the local economy. So the minister was saying, I think, something like a 5 to 7 year payback period for some renewable investments. You can hear of them paying themselves back in 3 years, depending on where you're doing it and what you're investing in. And after that, it's free money, basically. So there's a quick introduction to what's happening elsewhere. Hopefully, we're going to get into some interesting discussions about what's already happening here and directions coming up. And I will turn it over to my colleagues. Johnny, are you ready to go?
The presentation should be.
Okay, I'm just going to switch viewpoints here.
Maybe Agatha, would you come and join us? I don't know whether Dwayne is in the room.
Liz.
Oh. Take a seat at the table, Agatha. You have a slide that you can load that up. Okay, good.
Chairman, can you mic this?
So just in terms of panelists here, we have Agatha Labakan. I'm trying to find a mic. Can I find a mic that works? Okay. Thanks, Peter.
So we've got panelists who have come from Fort McPherson. We have David Krutko, who many of you know. David's been a leader in the territory for a long time. And now he's taking his leadership skills back to his community and doing some great work with Gwich'in organizations. And he'll be sharing information about the biomass project that Fort McPherson has launched and been very successful at. Beside David is Agatha Labakan, who's coming to us from Hutsulke. And as many of you might have known or read in the newspaper, that Agatha was just recently accepted a national award on behalf of her community for the solar project that the Hutsulke Dene First Nations has launched, and making that First Nation the first in this territory and perhaps first in Canada as the supplier of solar energy. So we're really, Agatha's going to be sharing that experience with us. And we also have Rene Gervais, who works with the city of Yellowknife, and he's involved in the community energy plan here. So we'll be hearing highlights of what the city of Yellowknife is doing in the world of renewable energies. So interesting panel, and hopefully we're going to have time for lots of questions. So maybe, guess you're ready to go. Are you ready? So we'll start with you, and then we'll carry on. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Is it still working?
Yep.
Thanks, Lois, for inviting me. As you mentioned, I'm the City of Yellowknife's. Be afraid about that. Yeah, I'm the City of Yellowknife's Community Energy Management Specialist, and my presentation today will go over some of the trends that are happening in the energy world right now and how it will affect community energy planning for us. I also like to go into a few details about what the City of Yellowknife has been doing. So we'll go back over some of the statistics that Dave presented earlier, so I think it's good that we have some repetition there. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that we're currently renewing our community energy plan, and we're collecting feedback from Yellowknifers or anyone that has advice, comments, questions for us through Twitter. So if any one of you wants to follow us, and well, you don't have to, but you can tweet using this hashtag there and with questions, and we'll get back to you and try to see if we can integrate some of your comments in our next energy plan. So this graph goes back to the notion of economic multipliers that they've explained earlier. It's different source, different numbers. I think this is for the states. Essentially a repetition of what was mentioned earlier about oil and gas being some of the poorest performers in terms of job creation in industries. And you can see other, not just energy sources, but also technologies like smart grid, building retrofits, energy efficiency, creating a lot more jobs than what oil and gas could eventually create. And gosh, look at bike generators, bike lanes. See what kind of job creation that can lead to. So if you want to develop the local economy, make your cities bike friendly, walking friendly, and that would help. So in Yellowknife, we've recently completed our latest community energy plan, and what we did is look at how we've been getting our energy. And so we got 3 years there. The latest one, 2013, you can see that we're still very reliant on fossil fuels. So the top green bar there is biomass, so you can see a significant increase there, more than doubled in the last 10 years, but still a minor portion of our energy supply. Propane increased, the second yellow bar on top there. So still better than fuel oil, but still a fossil fuel. The blue bar is our electricity supply, which until recently was mostly 95% hydro. These years it's closer to 70% hydro. And then we have fuel oil, that brown red bar, for space heating. And then the last two are transportation fuels, diesel and gasoline. So this leads to the question about what do we do about this? Well, there's a few things that we could do to improve this and create more jobs given our current situation. Fuel oil for space heating could be replaced with biomass, or other technologies like heat pumps or solar hot water for domestic hot water in summer. Transportation needs could be reduced by increasing local food production, or also reducing the amount of waste that would come out of the community down to Edmonton, for example. Make transportation more, again, friendly for bikes and pedestrians. And then what you're left with the rest for transportation, you can electrify it. But that will bring the question, we need to make sure that our electricity supply is also renewable and sustainable. And I want to mention, there was an article in the paper this morning about Yellowknife doing so well in terms of being green and producing less greenhouse gas emissions than the comparable cities elsewhere in Canada. That's true, but that's mostly because we're historically very efficient. Smaller homes, very dense construction in terms of how we built the city. So that's where our advantage came from. That said, we're still very reliant on fossil fuels. I think that's something we should be doing something about. Again, some repetition here. Price of solar. If we want to ensure that we have a sustainable energy supply, there's many things, electricity supply, there's many things we could be doing. We know that the territorial government is looking at many options. As a community, we're very limited in what we can look at in terms of installing windmills or building hydro dams. So our best option for us is solar. And fortunately, the trends are that costs are going down at tremendous rates. In this graph, we're going to 2013 at 74 cents per watt for the cost of the panels. Puts us in a situation where for residential rates here, it actually makes good investment sense to be putting up solar panels on houses. So it becomes a question of how are we going to promote this. And some of the suggestions we got from Yellowknifers is to make it a competition, essentially presenting it as a take back your power, be the first on your street, present yourself as someone that's proactive. There's also people that suggested we crowdfund solar panels for schools or shelters. So we know the economic case is there. It's a matter of how we're going to bring it forward now. So I'm going to be moving to another sector of our energy use, transportation. And you may be wondering, well, what's this analogy? Well, that's an ad from Radio Shack in the 1980s, might even be 70s, I'd have to double check, but these phones were the first cell phones, and they were extremely costly, not very convenient, but people still bought them, and now everybody has a cell phone in their pocket right now, or even Twittering at the moment. So I believe that that's pretty much where electric cars are at the moment. People don't buy them because they're super cheap and like super convenient. Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Because they're super cheap or affordable, they buy them because they're fun to drive, they're a status symbol, they're greener, and are actually more convenient. If you want to go and refuel your car, you don't have to go anywhere. You just plug it in at home when you're there. So less driving around there for refueling. Another trend that will affect the previous one in electrifying transportation, the cost of batteries. So currently, electric cars are very expensive. I would say mostly because of the battery cost. It's been going down very quickly in the last 20 years, and with the construction right now of the Gigafactory by my favorite person in the world, Elon Musk, you can expect a doubling of the production of lithium-ion batteries, which is in turn expected to reduce costs significantly as well. So now I'm going to bring it back to Yellowknife. As part of our energy inventory that we've completed last year, we've drawn up a map of space heating within the city. So use different factors, square footage, the use of the buildings, and calculated approximately how much heat each area of town was using, and applied a threshold there of above 50 kilowatt hours per square meter to identify the location where we had a high density of heat demand. So we can see a few areas that jump out of the page there. The airport area was identified as a location that had potential. Downtown, of course, one of our densest locations, had extremely high energy demands. And one other location down closer to where the multiplex is, the city itself has a few facilities there that use in total 400,000 liters of oil per year, and that's where those six lower red squares appear there. I wonder if I can show you. Yes. So these squares here are actually mostly city facilities. This said, considering all the information we got now, the city put together a few capital projects that we're working on this year. So for example, we're testing residential heat pumps. It's not reinventing the wheel. We have people in town that have been using it right now. We want to check for us if it makes sense. It's used widely down south. We want to see if it works in our colder temperatures, which they should. We're also working on a 20 kilowatt solar system for our field house. The unfortunate part with the feed-in tariffs is that as a commercial user, we have a lower rate. We're actually getting a lower return on investment than what residents could get, but it still made sense after all, so we're going to be doing this summer. We also have two large biomass systems on the go. One for Pump House 1, where we heat our water in winter, and going back to the multiplex, we're designing a centralized boiler system there for the arena, the field house, public works garage, the fire hall. About 7 buildings in total. And then we're putting LEDs everywhere. It just makes sense now. It made sense for a long time for exterior lighting, the street lights, the exterior of buildings. We're testing LED tubes right now, or LED fixtures that do daylight harvesting, so dimming with the amount of light that comes in through natural lighting. And so far, the results have been extremely good. So we'll be putting together a budget for essentially rolling that technology over in all of our facilities next year, provided we get the approval to do so. So I'm going to go back to some of the things we've done in the past. So our situation, we've seen the energy prices go up by 100% in the last 10 years. We've done about 14 different capital projects, including biomass boilers, LED lighting, using waste heat from our multiplex arena. We're also installing a waste heat recovery system at the Yellowknife Community Arena this year. So overall, with all these capital projects, we're actually saving $650,000 per year now. So if you look at everything we invested and the return on investment we have in average now on that investment, we're coming up with a 20% return on investment. I challenge everyone here to try to get such a good return on any investment in the free market. I mean, like stock market or bonds. I'm sure some businesses can do better than this. And we've reduced our greenhouse gas emission internally by 25% and increased our renewable energy use by 12%. We now sit at 62% as a municipal government. So as I mentioned earlier, we're currently renewing our energy plan. We're looking for action items that would make sense for our citizens to participate in. Some of the ideas we got so far, and very few of the ideas we got so far, is more community gardens, more local food production, using waste streams as energy sources. We have about $8 million worth of energy that gets landfilled every year, and some of it is renewable, that paper and cardboard. Ideally, we'd be able to reduce the amount that goes in the landfill in the first place, but until we have a way to reduce that incoming, ideally we'd have something to do with it. And then we also looked at a funding program for efficiency retrofits, solar PV systems, biomass installations for residents. So we'll be investigating that a bit more in the next few months. We actually have a study completed now, and we'll be reviewing this in the coming months. And some people also suggested EV charge station and lower rates for parking for hybrid vehicles. And that's where we're currently trying to get input from Yellowknifers. We're going to have open houses and surveys. We've done a survey already, some more surveys later. And we'll be putting forward a draft energy plan sometimes in August. And that is all for me. I'd like to thank you for your time.
So the next, I'm just going to invite Dwayne Wogemuth to join us. And Dwayne's been working on renewable energies for quite a while. So I think we've got our next presenter is Agatha. We got Agatha's. Sure, got a minute.
Okay, Remy, sorry, for the first time it's ever occurred to me in your bar chart of Yellowknife's energy use, does that include possibly the airport? Like flights in and out, or is that totally outside of the picture?
You can use
It
a mic
occurs to me
and
that
a
that's a big chunk of energy that Yellowknifers use.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, it is a big chunk of energy that Yellowknifers use. It is, however, not usually included in community-based greenhouse gas inventories or energy inventories. So to be comparable with other jurisdictions, we left it out. We did include additional travels in the inventory. For example, we assumed that to address this issue, that people would still drive out of town sometimes to make it a bit more realistic for our situation. But we didn't want to include all the air travel because then it wouldn't be comparable to other communities.
Yeah, get away. Yeah, I think everybody's having a hard time hearing, so as close as possible. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Well, my name is Agatha Labucan. I'm the Tla'otseketana First Nation Senior Administrative Officer. I took full responsibility as the SAO last year. Prior to me, there was another SAO named Graham Drew, and before him was Ray Griffith. So I did training under both of the two gentlemen, and this project's been a project that was started from Ray Griffith. And so basically I just took the last part of what they've worked on for all these years, and they worked under the directives of the Chief and Council. And so this is where we are today, and we finally completed the project, which is our Tla'otsek'eh Solar PV project, the first of its kind in Northwest Territories. So you can see there the first slide is just showing you a map of where we are and all the communities that are around us. Again, our community, if you see there on the map, you can see the circle, that's where our old tank farm used to be, and now that has moved. And this is where we've installed the solar panels. So you can see where we are situated here is we're right next door to the NTPC power plant. So the project started in October, and we've started with about 8 students. Gradually the students' numbers declined. We ended up with 3 solid students. And basically the students were doing the training on how to install the PV solar panels. Okay, bear with me. I knew I wouldn't be able to see my notes on this, so I got to go back to this. Okay, so you can see the project that started in October. We had two ways of trying to put this together. The first one was to go under the ground, but by the time everything, all our supplies came into the community, it was the end of September, so the ground started hardening. So by the time we got all the materials, we ended up having to go the other solution, which was gabion baskets. And that took a lot of work. And we only had 3 students. So we had to utilize a lot of the local workforce, like our employees. So this is where you see a little bit of snowfall. So we have there with us 144 panels that we put up and So we have 3 rows of 3 inverters, total of 144 panels, 48 by 250 kilowatt panels per row. So this is how it looks now, and we had some challenges with the weather and stuff, but we still made it happen, irregardless. So this was a couple of weeks ago. This was when the NTPC got their guys in to do the interconnection, completing all of the AC work and what NTPC had to do in regards to getting our panels going. And this is us, me getting the first, we were nominated by Bullfrog Energy, one of our funders, and came to me as quite a surprise when he said that out of the blue, he's like, I'm going to nominate the community, and I said okay, and so I looked it up, and it seemed interesting, and to later on find out that the community came runner-up with 6 other First Nation communities for projects in regards to solar energy, and then we won. So when I accepted the award, it was a great honor for our community, because this is the first step in sustainable energy, I guess you could call it, within the First Nation, and we're selling 35 kilowatts back to the corporation, NTPC, in order for them to reduce the amount of diesel that they use per year. And it could, this is a step in the right direction, I think, for the community and other communities that want to follow in this way. And so these are some of the people that worked on the project that made it happen. So the top larger picture is Laura Jane. She was one of the students. Our Chief Felix, Sudhir from MACA, Donald Andre from Northwest Solar, our employee Maud, another guy, Mario, and then our other employee, Derek. And at the bottom you have Mario, Wade, Sudhir, Linda Todd, and Meyer from NTPC. So this is the group, and we had a lot of people help the community work on this project to make it happen, and that's where we are.
David, you want to take it away, and then we'll go to you, Dwayne?
I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and certainly for everyone that are here and interested to find solutions for the challenges in local territories. Thank Dennis and Bob for getting us together here, and I had an opportunity to spend some time with Bob in the Legislative Assembly. And
Speak closer to me.
that's the way we speak in the which are really wide.
As close as I can.
So again, I'd just like to thank Bob and Dennis, because I think a lot of times I've gone to famous charrettes and everything, and it seems like it's a contest for who's got the most cash in the pocket, or basically who wants the most control. And one thing I find is it's frustrating. The last one I went to, for example, like the park, had control of everything. And I think the frustrating part that we see in a lot of our communities is that the cost of living continues to go up. Again, there's nothing in place to remedy the situation. And the only thing, the powers we have in our communities is the ability to control costs. You can control your operation and maintenance costs in communities, and you have to find ways to do it. We have a situation in Port McPherson right now with our Hamlet. Basically is under third-party management because of uncontrollable costs that they just didn't reel it in when they should have. And one of the biggest cost drivers in communities is diesel and energy costs. And there's ways you can reduce those two areas. And I think because of the situations we run into Port McPherson, is the people finally took it on themselves at a community assembly to say enough is enough. What can we do to keep our hard-earned dollars in the communities so that we can expend it here on the people in the community? How can we, instead of paying Exxon to bring diesel fuel in from Alberta, wherever, and truck it up our highway systems, across our river bodies, and into our communities, and put it in a bunch of storage tanks at $2 a litre, what can we do to improve those costs? And I think what came out of the community assembly came from a lot of our elders. They said, why aren't we going back to what we used to do? Sure, it was hard work, but for them, it was just every day you had to go out, harvest your wood, harvest your basically basics, your food supply, your caribou, your meat, your fish, whatever. It was something you did every day. And I said, well, why aren't we doing that anymore? Why? And I think where the light switch went off is in Port McPherson in 1997, where the power plant burnt down in December. It was 46 below. And the only people that got relief were people that actually had wood stoves in their houses because they had no power and the furnace went out and the lights went out. And I think because of that, that was the turning point for the community to decide we got to take this on and find a solution to be independent, self-reliant, and find ways that we can cut the dependency on southern markets. And the alternative was pellets, but again, pellets, we do have to bring it in from the south. Sure, there's an entrepreneur in enterprise looking at that, but again, we still got to import it into communities. So one of the things the elders were talking about at that assembly is how do we, as a community, being able to maintain our own heating systems with the materials around us. And one of the materials they were looking at was down at, you can't quite see the river anymore, which we used to, is all growing in with willows. And the elders were saying, well, why don't you harvest the willows? Because we want to be able to have another good look at the Peel River and watch the river flow and the ice go and everything else that what they used to do in the past. So, and again, it was the involvement of the communities, and the key player in all of this was the elders. And sharing their traditional knowledge and sharing their basically understanding of how they used to do things. There never used to be diesel trucks pull up to their houses in the past. They owned their own log houses, they owned their own cabins, they owned their own gardens. They did everything themselves because you had to be independent and self-sustaining to maintain yourself in the Arctic. And again, we're north of the Arctic Circle. A lot of people call Yellowknife north, me I call Yellowknife south because we're on the Beaufort Sea. But I think that, so what really turned it around was basically saying, well, what can we do to set an example to the rest of the community? So they took it on, well, let's try using the band office as the building that will say, well, we'll show you how we're going to do it, and along working with partnerships with basically the Government of Northwest Territories in regards to Arctic Energy Alliance, Canmore funding we got from Department of Environment, and also at the same time they were developing a forest management plan with the Government of Northwest Territories. So the Gwich'in is one of the few regions that have a forest management plan in place and working off of these different instruments to come up with solutions to that problem. So one thing we found right off the bat is that, you know, harvesting willows is one thing, but you got to allow it to mature and cure over a year or two in order to make sure it's at the right, you know, you think people, we assume you just go out there and you harvest willows and chip it and throw in the thing and start burning it. Well, it's not that easy. So it took a little bit of growing pains for us to come around to that. And I think what we realized is that, well, what's the alternative? The alternative we had was cordwood. So we still have, like, you know, the statistic that makes me jump out of my boots is that 95% of the people in social housing in Fort McPherson depend on income support to sustain them. So how can we do, what can we do to maintain those people in that community by giving them some dollars so they keep in their pocket to sustain the community? The average income in Fort McPherson is about $18,000 a year. With $18,000 in a community of that size, almost 900 people, it is very, people are struggling day in and day out. So what can we do to stimulate that? So what we did is how do we keep the boiler going? We know we can't get the wood pellets this year. We chipped it last summer. We're hoping to have it ready for this fall so we can use the wood chip. But in the meantime, we decided, well, let's go out and cut 50 cords of wood. 50 cords of wood, hire 50 people, and you go out and get a cord apiece, and you basically have money in your pocket. It's a $20,000 investment. But what's the alternative to basically making that investment versus the fuel consumption that we were using? So what we found within the first 4 months, so we did a combination of, so it took us a little while. We were stumbling around with, looking for basic pellets and whatnot and where we can get it. There wasn't really a supplier in the region. Now there's one in Inuvik, but again, it's at $800 a ton. And we're looking at a bag of pellets out of Inuvik, it's about $12 a bag. And you guys got a deal here at Walmart, it's almost $5. So go buy your pellets at Walmart. But I think it's important to figure out how do we retain those dollars to communities, how do we reduce the cost in regards to the use of carbon fuel products in our communities. And in Gwich'in, we're famous for fighting with the big boys, regardless if it's ANWR in Alaska in regards to 1002 or battling the courts in Yukon in regards to the Peel River watershed. Because for us, you've got to set the example to show the rest of the world that you're serious. And I think as a community of our size, we have to look at those alternatives and start really making a difference. And I think one thing that we did learn is, so we ran the project with the combination of pellets. We were picking it up in Inuvik, calling it back to a community, one bag at a time, and man-bombing it in. And it was getting a little expensive. So what we said was, what's the alternative? So we went and cut 50 cords of wood. We maintained the boiler basically with wood in the daytime, cord wood that people cut locally, and in the evenings we run it basically off wood pellets. So that was sort of the balance that we got from using an imported product, but also using a local product. The other thing is that with the meat, in the meantime, when I talked about the forest management plan, we're also developing a wood marshalling yard in Fort McPherson, which we basically put a Quonset up so that there's a place that we can store our wood chip once we chip it, and also allow it to basically cure. And also the other thing is that we also have a wood lot. We have wood misers in almost all our communities. And McPherson, I mean, everybody's talking about gardening this morning. We're going to learn from you guys because we just got our greenhouse in McPherson, but we're going to basically put it up and get it up and going. So in our discussion with ITI, what's going to happen here, and they said, oh, they need 2x6s and 2x4s, this, that, and the other thing. And we said, well, how much do you need? And he said, well, I think we said, well, it worked out to about $20,000 just to get this thing up and going. We said, well, why don't you let us harvest the wood? So we sent a bunch of guys out. We got, I think, about 50 logs. Bring the logs in, and we're going to use our wood miser to cut our 6x6s to make the boxes for the greenhouse. So there's things that you can do in a community that can actually make a difference right now, using the wood products that you have in your area. But I think the more important part of all of this is that the savings that we had in Fort McPherson, just in regards to the usage of the wood, our system for I think about 4 or 5 months, is that we reduced our basically consumption by almost, we produced almost $100,000 kilowatts of heat from the boiler system for the band office and the health center. And also we were able to reduce our fuel consumption. Our cost at our band office was almost $7,000 a month. Now it's about $4,300 a month for diesel fuel. So we almost cut that by 40%. So I mean, we already start seeing the savings, but again, the other thing is that we're also realizing the importance of using local labor to basically do the harvesting. So the next stage of what we're doing, I mean, the whole goal of all of this is eventually run the whole system on wood chip. We don't have to import any pellets. We can continue to harvest our basically wood by way of cord wood. And we're also able to use the willows to basically run the boiler system. So I think it's how do you, and the money stays in the communities. And that's probably the most important part of all of this, is that the money stays in the pockets of the people in the communities, and it's not going to some corporation in Southern Canada. And I think, and again, we have to be able to realize that there's other alternatives. We're talking to the community here, Hamlet, Fort McPherson. I'm glad to hear a presentation from the city of Yellowknife, because I think that could really make a difference to the financial situation that Hamlet have found themselves in today. But I just going back over time, and I mentioned the burning down of the power plant, and the thing about that is, I think because of that situation, sometimes good things come out of bad things, but Out of that came a joint venture agreement between the Winchton Development Corporation and the Northwest Territories Power Corporation called AUDRE. It's a residual heat system that was hooked into the school that was built in Fort McPherson. And then from there it goes to the water treatment plant. So basically what we were able to do is see savings on both ends, that the money from the education department, the O&M costs that they were based on was the cost of diesel fuel heat for the school. So the savings they got there goes back into their education programs. So it goes back into the education system. So the investment that the village had made wasn't just to make a profit, it was how do we take those profits and benefit those infrastructure community. The project, it's had its ups and downs, but it's now making a profit of $200,000 a year for the village. But again, it's those type of initiatives that you have to put in place. So I'm feeling I'm being that ex-politician Bob's talking about, so I think I better let her go here because I'm starting to wander off here. So thanks again.
Wait, we'll flip this over to you.
Do you mind if I throw this?
No, not at all. Not to waste any time, has anyone got a burning question that we can, Suzette, could you yell it out because everybody's having a hard time hearing?
My question is for David. The boiler, was it the same boiler that you wood pellets and wood chips, like one unit, or what did you have to do mechanically?
The unit has three functions. It can use all three aspects. It can use basically core wood pellets and wood chip. So it has the ability to burn all three types of product. So that's the unique thing about this system. But the key was it's really designed for wood chip. But you can't burn the two alternative systems.
Wayne?
Okay, awesome. Oh, it's okay. Everybody can hear me? Perfect. It's a pleasure to be here and great to see this kind of event happening. This is awesome. Let's see if I can make this work. I'm not going to talk about all that much. I came just to talk a little bit more about energy efficiency and how that can help local economies. It goes along the same lines of keeping dollars in communities, so instead of spending money on energy and having that go to well-paid employees just in Hay River, or whether that's being exported to southern Canada, energy efficiency can keep that money that we would otherwise spend on energy in the community, so it's staying in the specific community. Before I talk a little bit about energy efficiency, I wanted to kind of make a few comments, I think, about kind of a non-energy related, but energy related thing I think a lot about, and I've had a conversation with Bob about this once, but I think a lot of us work too much. And if we actually worked a bit less, we'd have time to grow our own food and harvest our own cordwood. And that would allow a lot more of the money we make to actually stay in the communities. And especially in communities where unemployment rates are really high, those few government jobs, if the GNWT was to offer half-time jobs rather than full-time jobs, a lot more people could be employed. You could have a lower unemployment rate, and people who are employed would have more time to grow their own food, harvest their own food, harvest their own cordwood. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so. Thanks. So on energy efficiency, I feel like I was thinking of the expression, it did come to me at one point, something about pudding, what do we say? When the results speak for themselves. What's the expression?
The proof is in the pudding.
The proof is in the pudding, there we go, the proof is in the pudding. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the house that I built here in Yellowknife in 2009. Some of you might know it. It's better known as the Goat House. It's a fairly small, simple house, but I basically built it to be really energy efficient. So I'll give you the pudding first, I guess. So this is, I'm self-employed, so I have to tally all my utility costs and home costs every year. So this is all my utility costs for 2014. So basically, all my utilities minus phone and internet was just over $3,000 for the year, and that's all utilities combined. I think most people's heating bill alone is close to that. And it's nothing miraculous or ingenious, really. It's a lot of it is mostly energy efficient technologies off the shelf, and then just turning things off when they're not needed. And since the topic of this conference is a little bit about economy and local economy, I wanted to talk just a little bit about how each one of these utility bills, how much of that money is really exported. And so wood pallets, if we could produce them in the NWT, that would be great, and that would be all money kept within the NWT. But right now, those wood pallets are coming from Alberta, so that entire $751, minus a little bit of money to the people that are distributed in Yellowknife, for myself anyway, that money is almost entirely exported. The same with propane. And the other two, water is a utility provided by the city of Yellowknife here, so a lot of that money is kept local, which is great. Electricity, at least for Yellowknife, we're mostly hydro, a little bit less the last 2 years, but still I guess the majority of that money is kept within the NWT, if not in Yellowknife. So as far as like focusing on energies that we can change to keep that money in the NWT, diesel electricity is a big one, and propane and heating oil. Wood pellets as well. If we can somehow create local wood pellets in the NWT, that would make that a local fuel source instead of an imported fuel source. But yeah, so for most of the year last year, we had 3 people in the house. There was a couple of months where we only had 1 person, but yeah, so that was 3 people in the house and $3,000 total utility costs. Electricity was the biggest one, and then water. The wood pallets was entirely space heating. Propane was mostly for cooking and water heating, and then a little bit for backup heat. So heating, was probably somewhere between $800 and $900. Although some of those wood pallets were purchased for the whole winter, so that actually covers part of the 2015 winter. One more thing we talked David talked a little bit about cordwood. Cordwood's an amazing energy source. We don't really have to put much energy into it. It's mostly labor that goes into it, and it's local, and the money stays in the community. So just on one project I was working on, I did an energy price analysis for fuels in Hay River, and converted that to gigajoules. And cordwood is like $13 a gigajoule in Hay River, and electricity and propane are about 20. So it's like almost half the price. It's about a third lower than heating oil or propane, even when you buy it. So that's buying it from somebody else. It's not quite as convenient, but maybe if people had a few more hours in the day because they weren't working 50-hour weeks, they'd be happier to stoke their wood stove and create local employment. And maybe we could do a campaign around that, convert to wood, support your local economy. And then electricity. So even in the South Slave, where electricity is local hydro, you convert the 26 cents a kilowatt hour to gigajoules, and it's $72 a gigajoule. So that's, what's 72 divided by 13? That's like 5 times the price of cordwood. So you better not be, having an electric space heater. That's for sure. But it would be great if somehow we could offer that electricity at a lower price too, because it is a local energy source, and it does provide local employment. At least in the South Slave, where it's all hydro. So, but that's in bigger hands than us, I guess. But we can try to change it. I won't spend too much on the next slide, but I just wanted to kind of show a few. I don't know if everybody can see past me, but just wanted to go through a little bit the specific technologies that are in the house to make it so efficient. I'll maybe start at the top left and work my way counterclockwise. So the copper pipe you see up there is actually a drain water heat recovery pipe. It cost me about $500, and it saves about 50% on my water heating bill. So it was probably the quickest payback of any item I ever put in that house. It has the longest lifetime too. It'll be there when the house gets demolished, and it has 0 maintenance cost and 0 maintenance time. And they actually make, a lot of the housing in the NWT isn't appropriate for a drain water heat recovery pipe that hangs off the bottom of a shower because we have single floor homes or crawl spaces. But they do make drain water heat recovery heat exchangers that go in the bottom of a shower or the bottom of a tub now too, so you can recover heat from a shower that way as well without having a space below your shower. So the next is a front-loading washing machine, and you'll note that there is no photo of a dryer. I think the Europeans are ahead of us in that way and not using clothes dryers. We live in a pretty dry climate, which makes clothes drying both inside and outside pretty easy. And below that is just a photo of my house during construction. We used a double wall technique, so it's got two 2x4s with another space in between. So it makes for about R40 walls, and there's a bit more money spent on labor because you're building two walls, but the material cost is a lot lower than using foam, and you can get pretty good insulation values. So, the next one is a photo of a window. So we use triple pane, double OE, double argon, like basically the best windows you can get. They're not that much more expensive than the standard window people would put in, and they save a good amount on energy costs. I also use fiberglass frames, which are a lot more durable. They don't expand and contract with heat like vinyl frames do, so you don't have to change them out when the seals go after 10 years. Those windows should last the lifetime of the house. The next one is an HRV. I installed a double core HRV, which is about 80% efficient. There's no heating on it at all, so I don't have to put a heating coil in the fresh air duct from the HRV, and provides all the fresh air I need. And then the next one is actually a photo of the blower door. That was, we were doing air infiltration tests on the house, and we got that house super tight. It's like a plastic bag, basically. So you can actually see that most of the fan is blocked off. We had to use the tiniest ring that they have for those doors in order to pressurize it and have the proper readings. Any of the bigger ones would just basically vacuum the house to too high of a pressure. Yeah, so I was pretty impressed with air tightness actually. The next one, this is water related, but we have a composting toilet, so we don't flush our drinking water down the drain every day. And when I first got the water hooked up, then the city wasn't reading the meter right away. They were just estimating. So they just estimated based on typical house consumption. I thought, big deal, whatever, they'll come read the meter in a few months. But within like 3 months, they hadn't read it, and the estimated water bill was at like 30 cubic meters. And I'm like, dudes, you gotta come read my meter. I'm at like 2 cubic meters. So they came back, and I had a big credit on my water bill for a few months. And then the last, or I guess the one on the top right, is just the on-demand propane water heater. That one's had its issues, but it certainly is efficient. So we haven't spent much on water heating. Water heater is pretty good. And then the one kind of top middle is spray foam. So we did a little bit of spray foam in the ceiling and at the wall headers, which just helped to make a really good seal in the attic and in the joints between walls at the floors. So that helped get the house really airtight. And then the last one there is just the pellet stove. So that's how we get most of our heat for the house. I designed the house really so that the pellet stove could be central and provide all of the space heating. And so a pellet stove is running for a couple hours every day of the year. And then the photo in the middle is just an aerial shot of the house. It was actually taken from a huge crane, but it shows the greenhouse on the top floor. So, yeah. Which has grown lots of tomatoes and cucumbers and everything else. Yeah. I think that's all I wanted to say. So.
Thank you all for being so efficient and succinct and with very powerful messages. And so we've got time for questions, which is great. So a question from Larry, and then a question from Doug, and then we're going to go to the online folks. So Larry, do we have a handheld mic that we could?
No. Not reliable.
Okay. Big voice, please, Larry.
Okay, I just have a short comment I want to make to the David about Fort McPherson, and you're the first person here today to talk about real sustainability and having the community really self-sufficient, sustainable life. And I really applaud that what's really important. I think that's the direction we have to go to achieve true sustainability. It has to be everybody in the community getting together. It doesn't take much money, you know. It just takes everybody working together.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've learned from 16 years as an MLA and minister and whatnot is you've got to get buy-in from the public service and the departments, especially public works and services. Anybody here public works and services? Because one thing that I ran into, like I mentioned, the residual heat system in Fort McPherson, that was something that the Goodson Tribal Council felt that it was going to help our education system in the community. It was going to be able to put those dollars for O&M back into education. And I think it's those little things that we do in communities that really make a difference. And the same thing with this biomass system in Fort McPherson. You know, no offense to the people here in Yellowknife, but the individual that the plant operator in Fort McPherson, he shut the valve off in December. And that's just when we're starting to get our numbers in regards to how the system was actually going to save us money overall. And it's not the first time he's done this. He done it last year. And I think that's the frustrating part, is you've got to get the government, departments and agencies on side on these initiatives and say it's not in it to make money. If anything, it's in it to keep the money in the communities to put back into the local economy. So there's a difference between actually making money for a business case to be profitable, but also sustain the community so the dollars stay in the community. And I think that was the frustrating part. We had meetings with the minister here a couple of weeks ago with our DGO in Fort McPherson. We came down and met with the Minister of Environment. We talked to the Premier. We talked to everybody that we got to get buy-in. So, I mean, we can have some great discussions here over the next couple of days, but if you don't get buy-in from the people that make the decisions, who are mostly in regards to people that make the policies and procedures and make the decisions at the front end. So for me, it's, you know, we're trying to negotiate our way out of this one with Public Works and Services, agreeing to some sort of a financial arrangement. Go back 4 years, do your calculations on what your fuel consumption was, and we'll just agree to whatever the difference is, and let's just get on with it. And we got to sign a power purchase or a heat purchase agreement going forward that spells out everything from who's going to turn the valve off, when you can turn it off, and who's got to be notified before you turn any valves off. So I mean, you know, I mean, there's frustrations all through this. For us, it's a pilot project. We realize that, but at the end of the day, it's got to make economic sense for the community it serves. And for us, the community has made a decision. We're not in it to make money. We're in it to sustain community opportunities by harvesting willows and basically cordwood in the communities, keep our office running, and also that the money we would have spent, regardless of $7,000 a month, which we were paying prior to this, for heating our band dogs, to now we're paying about $4,000 a month. So the savings are already showing results for ourselves as the people that run the band dogs. So I think it's, you know, again, we have to get support from everyone, especially in the government agencies.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question and response, David. Doug, your question?
Yeah, when I started using wood pellets, I did a comparison that was, I used $500 a ton, which was the cost of wood pellets, and equal heat in Northern Wells would be 90 cents a liter for diesel fuel. So for my comparison there, so at 500 a ton for pellets or 90 a liter for heating fuel, I could burn either one, made no difference. The heating fuel went up to $1, $1.20, $30, $40. No brainer what I was going to use, because the wood pellets were still the same. But the gentleman there on the left, when he did the gigajoule comparison on different fuels, you can compare your wood pellets to your cordwood and see just where your value was there. In the wells, with pellets at 500 a ton, and cordwood at 400 to 500 a cord, it makes no difference really which one to burn. They're pretty much comparable. I'm wondering how yours work out.
Yeah, for that specific project that I just did this past week, I didn't include wood pellets, but in general, on the all-weather roads, Yellowknife and the South Slave, there is a significant difference between wood pellets and diesel. And as you have to transport those wood pallets further and further, that price gap narrows because it takes 2 trucks to haul the equivalent energy quantity of wood pallets versus 1 truck of diesel fuel. So when you talk about hauling them long distances, the further you haul them, the more that gap between diesel or heating oil and wood pallets is going to narrow. So in Hay River is probably the case where there would be the largest gap, the largest benefit, from converting to diesel or heating oil to wood pallets. But the further you have to haul them, so perhaps Norman Wells and Nuvik, the further you have to haul them, the more that gap between the 2 fuels is going to be closer because you spend more on the transportation for wood pallets versus heating oil.
I guess what I was asking was the difference between cordwood and wood pallets. Like we would suggest everybody cut cordwood, but if your wood pallets are cheap enough, they're very comparable to what a cord of wood would cost. Like in the wells, like I say, it's nearly $500 a cord for wood. And
Right.
a ton of pellets is $500 a ton. So
Yes, and I don't have numbers right on me to say exactly, but I know I have done that number for Yellowknife before, and they were pretty close. They were almost exact. And in the Hay River, wood is quite a bit cheaper in Hay River, South Slave anyway, because wood is more abundant and larger trees. So I would guess there that cordwood is cheaper than wood pallets.
Peter?
Just to add quickly to that, the cordwood is cheaper. Kikiza did an analysis of the 3, and the cordwood was definitely substantially cheaper just by the fact it was around $250 to $300 a cord to buy it, which is quite a bit cheaper than $500. But I like also what David Kruko was saying in terms of the chipwood, because again, you're not having to import it. You can use a wide range of fiber, including drip logs and willow and residual wood that's cut for clearing fire guards. You've got all sorts of fiber supply, and you don't have to import it. It's labor intensive, low technology, and you keep a lot more money in the community. So even if you look at Norman Wells, the difference between your pellets and cordwood is the same price, then cordwood bought locally is still a greater contributor to the Norman Wells economy than pellets coming from the creek.
We've got a question online here, and then I know Wade's got a question, and then I think Julie's got a question. No, wait. The question online?
So Jim's following in from Wati with his class.
Can everybody hear?
No.
Can you hear? No.
I don't know whether that's going to work.
Okay.
It's not on. Sorry.
Yeah, Jim from Wati is calling from with his class, and he asked, everyone focuses on installation costs. This is going back a little bit when we were talking about solar panels. And he says, glad to hear a mention of O&M. So far, there doesn't seem to be any funding to keep existing solar, thermal, and PV functioning at peak efficiency. Is the savings sufficient to fly in skilled technicians? And I guess that's for O&M and maintenance.
Could you articulate the question again? Clear question?
Yeah, I think he's just trying to ask basically what is the O&M on solar PV and existing solar thermal, and is there a need to fly people in to maintain these things?
Okay.
I think we can probably.
No, that's not working.
Oh yeah, it's working now. I think it's going to depend a great deal on the situation and what the O&M requirements are. If it's cleaning, or if it's damage, or if it's just decay over time, because I think the PV panels decay by about 2% per year. It is something obviously that you have to do, but I think it's going to be very dependent on the location and specific situation. It's not a very definitive comment, but here comes the definitive comment.
I don't feel like I have much to add really. Just to say that usually solar PV, like we're using mostly in Yellowknife, don't really have that much maintenance to have done anyways. Cleaning might not even be worth it on the labor cost. But then you might have an inverter that fails once in a while, and that's where it's important to have electricians close by to fix those. But they have long warranties as well. PV, same thing, long warranties, and they usually don't fail unless they get damaged by accidents or vandalism. So very low O&M for locations that have access to labor.
Follow it?
Yeah. So I think they do have a tracker, a solar tracker, and a motor is burnt out. And I think that is the problem. So he says all our existing solar infrastructure is either non-functional or operating below par. And I think he's talking about the motor burnt out, and major PV no longer follows the sun. So this is a solar tracker that follows the sun, and I guess moving parts eventually break. And having technicians close by is key, he says. So yeah, there's money for installing these things, but there isn't money for maintenance.
Wade, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I could answer that question I was just asked too as well.
Okay, did you want to get the mic then to answer that?
You want me to have the mic?
Well, I want you to be to the point.
Yes.
We've got not a lot of time.
All right, so I guess the question.
Is that on?
Yeah, here we go. Nope.
Turn
All right. So yeah, as far as operation and maintenance, PV is the lowest of all renewable energies for O&M costs. The most expensive O&M cost for renewable energies is deep geothermal, from my understanding. Then wind and all the rest of them land in between somewhere. But because no moving parts, it's low operation maintenance. Power Corp doesn't clean their panels off that they own because labor costs are too high, and they only lose about 5% with dust, and if you get a good rain event, it'll wash them off once a year. Inverter replacement cost depends. If it's centralized inverter, you can look at a 10 to 15 year replacement. If they're microinverters, we don't know because they haven't been around long enough, but they seem to be, have a low failure rate, but you can expect to replace one microinverter maybe over a 10-year period. So O&M costs are very low. Whenever these questions are asked about renewable energy systems to me in remote communities, I often say, well, we never ask that same question of oil people who maintain the oil systems, because that's just normal, that's just common. But you have to ask that of the existing systems as well. What's it cost to get an electrician in to fix X, Y, and Z, or an oil boiler repairman? So we don't ask those questions, and we should. But renewable energies always get it on the O&M side. There's O&M on all sides. That's to answer that question. We don't put trackers in anymore. That was something that we did through the solar energy strategy. We tried 3 trackers in 3 different communities. 2 of them are still working. That one is not anymore. They should lock it out in the south-facing position at their latitude, and they should be fine. They'll still get quite a bit of energy from that system. Yeah, but the motors, we don't recommend trackers in the far north, because somebody may forget to lock them out. I guess my question going to David was, did Public Works and Services give you an explanation as to why they shut the valve off?
Yeah, I think the issue was the consistency of the heat. They were saying that the heat wasn't consistent, but the problem we have in McPherson is that the health center also serves as the nurses' residence. So they work in the daytime, then they basically the residents are on top of the health center.
Yeah.
So because it's a multi-use building, in most cases, when we were putting the wood in the boiler, you were filling it up every 3 hours. So it burnt itself down, and then it'll kick itself back up. But then at night, because we sort of figured out the challenge we had is we had to have the heat at the nighttime, not in the daytime.
Yeah,
and I think that's where the change took place in the night.
Yeah.
And I think also there was a person from Public Works was supposed to go up and check the system and see exactly why it wasn't actually catching it. And I think there's something to do with the monitoring system that was in place. It was monitoring they were getting this temperature from outdoor temperature was 0 degrees. It was 34 below outside. So for some reason it wasn't giving you the right reading. So I think it's more of a technical issue, but more importantly it was the question of was there effect on the delivery of the heat system because we were using cordwood in the daytime. And we were filling it up every 3 hours, which was basically causing it to burn down. Then you fill it up, it'll burn up again, so the temperature would fluctuate up, and then, so once it burnt down again, the temperature would go down. So it came down to a more of monitoring the problem, and I think Public Works was going to go in with one of their techie peoples and actually monitor the system right from the boiler right to the building, because there's something to do with the building. So.
Oh, good. That's a story I got on the government side too. So that's good.
Got a question?
Yeah. Yes. But I just need to respond. So yeah, there is like I think that once the chips start using chips more consistently, then you'll have more constant, constant heat, and then that valve won't need to be shut off because it's not a conspiracy. I think that the tech people just need to make sure that their systems are being protected as well. But I will make sure that that we work on that. Thanks.
But I think also, just to be fair to ourselves, is we also were getting calls from the nurses and the doctors after they shut the system off, telling us to turn on the boiler because it's too cold in the health center. So I mean,
yeah, we have to work out some issues there for sure, but we're working on it.
We got a question for Bob and then one from Dennis.
Thanks, Lois. Yeah, great discussion. And I just had a quick question for, is it Agatha Labucan? About Klutske. I was very pleased to hear the extra lengths that the community went to give some training to young folks. How did that work out? And have any of them expressed interest in continuing on to develop expertise in that area? Thank you.
Yeah, we had 8 students take the course. However, I think the training was done in 5 days. From a 10-day training course, we condensed it to 5 due to the weather and stuff. We had 3 successful students complete the project. Now with the 3 students, the intention was that once, well, when FDPC came in to do the connection and stuff, they were also a part of it. So now the students that successfully completed the program will now be our, what you call maintenance people, as and when we need them. They're able to do minor repairs. So we don't, as Wade mentioned, there's, we were told there's very, very low maintenance required. The one thing that we are getting is a computer to monitor the rays, the usage of the solar panels. So in the event that turns off, then we'll go in and get somebody in there. But yeah, that's what they're doing. And in fact, one of them was so, one of the students, Large Michelle, she has, and her family has a cabin out of Lutske, and now has been very intrigued by this and actually mentioned to her parents to see if they can get solar panels at their cabin. So yeah.
Thank you.
Great, and I hope Jim is listening. Jim and his class in Wati, we're listening to that response. Thank you.
Good. Dennis.
Just a few words on solar that I just would like to add to the conversation. We do now have at the college in Fort Smith, we have a 3-array configuration on the college at the electrical apprenticeship program. So there's ability to actually look at the different configurations of panels to ensure that we have the correct angles for these panels. It's very important in the north that the angles are struck right, and they may not be, because of the high degree of reflectivity off of snow, the production rates can be much higher with the steep angled panel. So in the wintertime, you want your panels pretty well almost vertical, and in the summer in Yellowknife you wouldn't go more than 60 degrees angle. But so the choices of putting it on the roof or on the wall are really important. If you're a residential person, that you pick the right. they've also noticed that the closeness to the snow surface can increase the reflectivity by up to 10%. That's one of the new findings that we've had out of the system at the college, and it's monitored on a daily, hourly basis to give us that information. But when you're talking about solar installations that are going to be there for 50 years, it's absolutely imperative that the science of solar energy is well understood. When it comes to the deterioration of panels, it confuses people sometimes because the greatest deterioration takes place in the first couple of years, but the average deterioration is less than 0.5% a year. So that when you actually, you've got a 50-year lifespan before you're at 25% deterioration of the power. So it is a very good system. Very, the problem with deterioration rates is that we haven't had any solar panels up for 100 years yet. But we may find that that they last a very long time, and the replacement of a solar panel or an inverter is going to be the cheapest part of the system in the future. Most of the costs of the systems are the wiring, the stands, the whole setup that you have to go through in order to put the panel in its place. But once you get over that initial, like in Litzelkay, that system might be there 100 years from now and still producing power for the people at a very, very inexpensive price.
Thanks. And we're going to get into more details about the technologies and cost benefits in the next panel. We've got certainly some experts that are going to be involved in that discussion. So I think we got time for one more question before we take a break.
I just had a comment. The wood pellet systems that are putting into normal wells seem to solve the issue that David might be experiencing with his. When you have one big, large super boiler that's creating all this heat, you're shutting it down in the shoulder seasons like the early fall and perhaps the late winter. And what's happening in the wells is they're using smaller units with the cascading, and the new sections by cascading, I mean, they're putting in multiple units, 3, 4. The newest building that they've built there right now, just gone online on wood pellet, is 10 56 kilowatt units. I think it's about 150-man transit residence. It's called the Mackenzie Valley Inn, if I'm not mistaken. It's going to run on wood pellets throughout the year because it's designed to even heat the hot water throughout the summer. So there's no shutting off valves at any time. Those boilers just kick in as required for additional heat load. If it takes 2 to keep the heat up, fine. If it takes 10, fine. And the nice thing about that I think, is that if 5 boilers happen to go down, you still have 5 operating. You're not without heat. You've got 5 operating. So there's benefits to it, I can see.
Thanks, Doug. And I think you're really illustrating that this is technologies are improving as we go. Final comment there, Dave?
I want to talk to Dennis.
Okay, well.
In McPherson, we are also looking at solar for the Gloney Lodge. Used to be outside the community. We moved it into the community as a tourism information / meeting hall. We are looking at solar panels for that. We're also got another proposal for the Midway Lake Music Festival and putting solar panels up there because we used to have solar panels on the lodge when it was at the old original site. So we're looking at using those because people love to move to Midway Lake, and they spend, if not weeks on end after the festival. People just stay right up there. They don't even go back to town, and people have their cabins and everything up there. So it's for them. It's an energy source that's free, and if they want to use it, they can use it. So I think it's those type of initiatives that are really going to make a difference. But in regards to the whole idea of these systems going forward, I know that the next generation of biomass systems are gensets that can generate both power and heat. And I think that's one thing you've got to be conscious of is the future technologies that are coming, and especially in communities. The biggest cost driver that sort of caught ourselves as the Development Corp in McPherson. So when we start getting our power bills for the biomass system was about $700-800 a month, which we never really calculated in, but because we're paying, I think it's 48 cents a kilowatt, it's something that you got to be conscious of because that's a cost that you don't have control over. But hopefully in the future you can generate heat and electricity for the whole facility. So I think that we've got to be conscious of these new technologies. Thank you.
That's a good point at which to have a break here, and we'll resume at 3 with the next panel of experts on renewable energies. Thank you very much for your participation.
So I've been trying to yeah, like because you want to use your computer, you want to be if you just want like a slide chart, yeah, what if you oh yeah, yeah, we can't do it all at the same time. We can hit the live stream, but the software for some reason it's just not reliable.
I know, but like can you video camera?
No, it's attached to that. It's attached to that computer, so I can only go as far as I'm speaking. Yeah. Ideally, next time we'll have be able to switch between a computer screen and that, but we don't
Oh, okay.
yeah, so we're going to plan for it.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you go into Laravel Forge, you'll see there's a server set up. It's going to be I'll show you on the Git repo, and you should just be able to deploy it. It should go up. Yeah. No, you should. This one works. So, yeah, I said why the live cycle, like the industrial age,
That was Bruce. He's watching online. He said that the voice is really hard to pick up. Yeah, no, that's like I said. The other thing is that it's really hard to see the stuff on the screen.
Yeah, we can't switch to the screen. I think it was when I got there. Yeah, I mean, I was so
Rachel Knoxley down here. Yeah, I just got to pass it along. He phoned me in the middle of the meeting to let us know that.
So you don't have so yeah, you just need to
See his daughter.